President Trump makes his case for the first 100 days in a rally and a new TV interview, and he's facing another economic rebuttal, though, to the 100 days claims he's making about progress. In fact, there's tough new signals that growth is flagging in the U.S. Trump's big new interview wound up showing him admitting a point that his DOJ also tried to deny for legal reasons. Trump admitting he's refusing to pick up the phone and facilitate a detainee's return. And so he's not really following the Supreme Court order by his own admission. So we're going to get into both of these stories for you tonight. I want to begin with the sort of double-barreled problem the administration's facing as markets have slowing growth and mounting uncertainty.
The White House received its first GDP report card. The economy shrank 0.3% in the first quarter of 2025.
The U.S. economy shrinking for the first time in 3 years.
The headline was that GDP in the first quarter contracted. First time we've seen a negative number since 2022.
The sharp reversal from the 2.4% growth we saw in the fourth quarter.
The economy is contracting. There's no doubt about it.
Tariff turmoil sending GDP into the red. Stocks selling off a bit as the president's trade war now leading to big questions about where this economy is heading.
And the problems that Trump started in the markets are not just staying there. That news about a shrinking economy means a higher recession risk. Now, let's be clear and fair. Many factors, of course, can shape economic growth or retreat when you're talking about the entire U.S. economy or, as so much has been discussed lately, the entire global interaction of the economy. Those new numbers on the contracting overall gross domestic product, is that because of Trump's tariffs? Well, largely the answer is yes. The main driver of the first quarter contraction was Trump's trade war. That's from the Wall Street Journal, a kind of journalistic Bible for the financial class. And the point can be nuanced. Markets and growth often reflect plans for the future, expectations, right? Businesses will make moves. In this case, they have been bracing for the much advertised tariffs to take effect. So those new numbers were recorded before the Trump tariffs officially hit. Now the U.S. economy is at risk of repeating pandemic-era scenes, empty shelves, shortages of popular goods. That's from Axios. And it's what big box CEOs have warned about in a private meeting with President Trump. And it's not immediately reversible because the tariffs can bring what they call long disruptions in these supply chains. And then there are the toys. You know, China makes many products that Americans buy. We know about prices going up, but some products like toys could become so hard to find at all that we're out of them for months, stretching all the way to Christmas. Retailers eyeing toy shortages, freezing holiday orders, predicting those shortages and higher prices. And that's the kind of setback that people will notice. Trump is already trying to get ahead of that potential holiday storyline, a kind of a Grinch problem. He suggests children maybe just can get by on fewer dolls.
Somebody said, oh, the shelves are going to be open. Well, maybe the children will have 2 dolls instead of 30 dolls, you know? And maybe the 2 dolls will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally.
Okay, that's one response. But toys are just an indicator, something that everyone, even children, know about. But before these 100 days began of the second Trump term, he was arguing that the incumbent president should get credit or accountability for how the stock market does. He is now failing his own standard with the trillions wiped out, America's largest companies down about 8%. Facing that fall, Trump is ditching the former approach. And while the fall clearly came after he came into office, I showed you the chart for inauguration, with the markets responding to his tariffs, Trump now selling the claim that the fundamentals were some kind of mess that he inherited.
Since the election, the stock market has surged. Is calling it I don't want to say this, it's too braggadocious, but we'll say it anyway, the Trump effect.
Now, the stock market's not doing so well, and you're saying that's the Biden stock market, yet you are the president. Can you explain that?
No, I'm not taking credit or discredit for the stock market. I'm just saying that we inherited a mess. When you look at the stock market in this case, it says how bad a situation we inherited.
That's the president's argument. He has every right to make it, but the markets aren't exactly buying it. Trump held this cabinet meeting today with MAGA merch and hats on the table. You can see him there. Fellow internet marketer Elon Musk certainly knows a photo op When the boss wants one, you can see him there donning two hats, one on top of the other with Gulf of America, while aides competed to praise Trump.
This is the 100th day of the most consequential, historic first 100 days in the history of this country.
I think this could be the greatest administration since the founding of the country.
Mr. President, I want to thank you for your vision, for your leadership, for giving me the 100 busiest days of my life, and most exciting.
Exciting. The cabinet touting, quote, exciting times. That's the president's sort of chosen message, obviously pretty coordinated and repeated today. But off stage, there's more scrutiny on Trump's blatant conflicts, abusing shadowy virtual currency networks, the Trump White House eviscerating the boundary between private enterprise and policy without precedent in history. The New York Times reports Trump pocketing more and more money from these crypto influencers and would-be donors. Hard to trace that money. Some of it's from overseas, it would appear. And that investigative reporting puts pressure on the Trump White House, just as reports about Musk's conflicts have, over time, impacted the administration and Musk's businesses, even how long he will be staying in Washington. I actually have more on that later this hour. The independent reporting also can bring up the kind of questions that the president and his PR tactics want to avoid and that he's struggling to answer. So here is the incriminating response I just mentioned a moment ago. We're going to hear it for yourself in the ABC interview, where Trump says he could follow a court order but will not.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now. But the court has ordered you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't want to do this.
But the buck stops in this office.
No. I follow the law.
This could be a useful exchange for potential accountability. The president there, Trump, admitting that he's not following the order. Then, in the exchange, as you heard, he kind of remembers at the court reference that the entire Trump DOJ strategy has been to pretend this is somehow muddled. You might recall when they had a bilateral meeting and had the other head of state say, what would we do? How would this even work? That it would be somehow hard to do. And then he says he claims to follow the law, which is a reminder that things still matter because he understands that it would antagonize the judges he needs and hopes to win over part of the time, and much of the country to admit the opposite, that they are not following the law. So you have sort of two sides of that answer there. The Supreme Court ultimately will have to decide whether to address that, the president admitting, I could do it, I'm not gonna, or whether they'll look away from this disturbing case where we all know the wrong person is stuck in a foreign prison because the Trump administration admits they erroneously sent him there. And honest Americans, including many self-identified conservatives, by the way, look at all this and oppose Trump's attacks on due process.